2024 was a pretty weird year, although it will be mostly remembered as the year where I didn't rank every new animated premiere from the prior 12 months, after setting something of a precedent in 2022. I didn't have the drive to watch and cover nearly 40 seasons of television in a timely fashion. Thanks to my delay, this joke from the Agent Elvis cartoon that dropped in 2023 has only continued to age poorly.
I paid 20 grand for this thing. That's over $100,000 in 2022, to put it in financial context for no apparent reason.
To make this video the best it can be, I decided to cut out the middleman and focus on 15 of the best and worst newcomers for these past 2 years. Or, when it comes to my taste, best and not best.
Holy poop!
This means I watched the first season, or batch of episodes, for everything I'm covering here. I brought in some special guests and bent my usual rules to make up for a few painful exclusions and a few painless exclusions.
Check out last week's episode, curated on the blockchain.
This highly opinionated and chronologically ordered countdown, followed by a ranking, is by no means a definitive list. Plus, a year of hindsight has given me time to reflect upon my old opinions and provide updated and relevant insights on 2023's output. Like, Hailey's on it, more like Hailey Welsh Hawk to spit on that. It? She must pay for what she has done.
Velma.
First, let's get everything I'm obligated to include in a YouTube video about this show out of the way.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah, it's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
This makes me angry! Why is Shaggy called Norville even though he doesn't have shaggy hair? Clearly, I know my basic Scooby-Doo lore.
He called the program the Special Covert Operations Brain Initiative, or Scooby.
Scooby? And wait, what did Scooby do?
This also makes me angry! I'm going to blame Mindy Kaling for these decisions, because she was definitely the showrunner, and also I may not be racist, but HBO Max's adult takeoff on teen dramas does so much I want to see from a modern Scooby-Doo iteration. The arc gorgeously breaks from the Hanna-Barbera style, a mystery doesn't have to be solved by the end of each episode, all of Mystery Inc.'s parents get personalities, and the cast shines, with Glenn Howerton and Sam Richardson as standouts.
My father stood me up, just like on my birthday. Only this time, Bill Gates didn't even jump out of a cake for me.
Wait, that's it? And that's worse than murder?
It's just that the reboot's identity is splintered between whether or not it should be taken seriously as a more adult update, or if this is a meta-comedy origin story that mocks the same elements people have been making fun of for decades.
My glasses! I hope this doesn't keep happening.
Without the characters' namesakes and overt Hanna-Barbera references, there's little that ties this back to the franchise. So much of the humor comes from insults and pop culture references that distract from the characters, even if you view this as its own thing. It's fine that they're unlikable, they're teenagers with mostly poor upbringings, but Velma keeps overcoming her selfishness or reconnects with Daphne in every other episode. They don't commit to any development, a lot of characters just feel pushed around, and maybe that was the point. Maybe everyone talks like a TV writer to satirize CW dramas like Riverdale.
I spit truth without a filter, like every comedian before #MeToo.
Whatever they were going for, it didn't resonate with me personally, but that's okay. If the well-animated B-roll didn't convince you otherwise, Velma is not one of the worst cartoons ever. It's just a cartoon with polarizing writing that brought out internalized racism and homophobia by altering an iconic character, released by a company that's canceling numerous animated projects left and right, including more traditional Scooby-Doo fare. It's not even meant to be a replacement for what the franchise will be going forward. I'm glad that Velma proved how much people loved the traditional formula, but something that was intriguing at best and irritating at worst didn't deserve all the hate it got. In all fairness, I think removing Scooby was always going to be a downgrade. Fred does a better job explaining it than me.
It was a talking dog, you know what I mean? There wasn't anything cooler than that.
Shape Island.
Apple TV may claim that this is aimed at preschoolers, but it's on the list due to actually being aimed at me.
I will stay up all night and figure this out. Square fell asleep.
Based on some children's books I've never heard of, and mostly written by alumni from shows I have heard of, comes a series about 3 shapes that live on an island, brought to life via focused, atmospheric, and handmade stop-motion animation. There's no gimmick or any other characters that the main trio of square, circle, and triangle face. It's all about them navigating complex communication issues in their friendship. They're all a little terrible at it.
Everything is going according to my plan.
Circle's plan falls apart.
Hey, play that again.
Everything is going according to my plan.
Nobody is perfect on Shape Island, and the characters' emotions aren't always spelled out. Its open-ended conclusions welcome discussion between kids and parents, and its laser-focused plots feel super original. Come for the summer vibes and refreshing approach to writing for children, stay for the comedy.
I found that the most satisfying puzzles are the ones where you really get a chance to focus on the pieces. Shall we?
Moon Girl, and Devil Dinosaur.
Ever since Disney acquired Marvel, their animated series have struggled to mimic or tie into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's great to finally get an adaptation that's focused on one set of heroes and lets their identity affect every aspect of the presentation. The urban settings, integration of comic elements, and sweeping palette changes take some cues from Mission Hill, but supercharged with high-energy action and delightfully choppy comedic scenes animated by Flying Bark, best known for Rise of the TMNT. Why'd they play the Sonic Ring sound effect when that happened? Traditionally, the hedgehog avoids red balls. There's a heavy focus on supporting your friends, family, and community, translating to culturally specific conflicts involving bat mitzvahs or gentrifying the Lower East Side.
Hey, so...
To me, the strongest stuff comes from leaning into how protagonist Lunella Lafayette is a girl genius with inventions of the week. The one where her crime-fighting partner and pet dinosaur named Devil just wants to be small is my favorite in a season with so many highlights. The clincher is the song from Be Cool Scooby-Doo's Andy Sturmer, one of many standout tracks in the mixtape sections, all of which cleverly combine action with music, but never in the same way twice. Anything with Lawrence Fishburne as the playful and chaotic god the Beyonder is a good time too.
Gotta win this competition, Lou! Only way to win is if I execute my idea without Eduardo around to mess it up. How in the world am I gonna work on it all alone without the Beyonder finding out?
Hey, it was poppin'.
It's crazy, we were just talking about you.
Of course you were. I'm fascinating.
Basing 22-minute episodes around simple morals, overusing emojis in the visual language, and underusing the giant red dinosaur were all minor issues that thankfully became less common throughout Season 1. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is the Marvel superhero cartoon I've been wanting forever, and I hope that Disney keeps pulling out all the stops to promote it so we get more.
Oh, look how cute she is. She kind of looks like you. How's it make you feel to see a pretty little brown girl on TV?
It feels fun and cool.
Well, Disney stopped pulling out all the stops to promote this, so we are not getting more. Fortunately, it still feels fun and cool.
I'll be watching you, Moon Girl.
Fired on Mars.
Based on an animated short from 2016, this was announced as a workplace comedy starring Pete Davidson. That is not what Fired on Mars is. What we have here is a sci-fi dramedy on HBO Max starring Luke Wilson and co-starring an uncredited Pete Davidson about a graphic designer fired from a tech startup that he relocated to Mars for.
We're putting your job on hold.
But, okay, the thing is, I left my entire life behind so I could be a graphic designer on Mars.
Jeff now struggles to find purpose in a society run by a Silicon Valley corporation that couldn't care less for creatives, uncovering secrets, moral quandaries, and alienating everyone around him. After talking to Johnny Two Cellos, I couldn't stop comparing it to The Last Man on Earth, with how both star awkward losers isolated in a small community that continuously dig their own grave. It's great at setting up imagery reminiscent of Infinity Train's backgrounds, looking straight out of a science fiction novel, letting the high-energy montages or breathtaking shots of Mars speak for themselves. Even the later episodes still surprised me with creative editing, devastating cliffhangers, and making me fear new kinds of death. Didn't think I'd ever be afraid of suffocating on Mars, but here we are. Fired on Mars is some of the best television I watched this year, and just like Pantheon before it, we need more American adult animation willing to break from the sitcom mold to do something gripping and dramatic. But they also need to be promoted and last long enough to find an audience. Sure, Mario and Barbie were the biggest movies of the year, but I'm sure they could have done better if their trailers dropped 3 days before release. Brilliant marketing!
Mulligan.
This is the kind of show that makes me want to film an angry live-action skit where I destroy an evil villain in a dollar store costume to symbolize how much I disliked it. Mulligan should have been a slam dunk. It stars Nat Faxon, whose name my dad once mistaken for as Fat Nixon, and shares some of 30 Rock's superb creative team, which was basically a cartoon already. The concept is, what if the unlikely meathead action hero had to rebuild the world that he saved from an alien invasion? They get some fun puns out of it, like a physical news cycle, due to the lack of electricity and internet. But Mulligan is dragged down by the comedy taking top priority. The visuals aren't bad. The action movie style opening is a great demonstration of what the team behind this was capable of. But they're secondary. This is what you think of when I say adult animation. I love tons of cartoons from comedy writers, but it's abundantly clear that this is a cartoon from comedy writers.
This guy's crazy. Let's shoot him. We are not assassinating anyone.
The captured alien Axithrax is from the planet Cardi B. This is a key part of the lore that you're supposed to take seriously and is repeated in multiple episodes. The wealth of pop culture name drops and jabs at politics reminded me of Inside Job, but here they overshadow the arcs and relationships between the oversized cast.
You're messing with the wrong scientist.
Ooh, I'm so scared.
Well, you should be, because you know who else was a scientist? Robert Oppenheimer. I mean, the bad guy from Sonic the Hedgehog.
Aww, they're not even gonna tell me which localization name they prefer. I barely retained anything about the characters because all I could think about while watching Mulligan was Krang.
And do not write another sketch about Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No one knows who Krang is. It would be a waste of time to talk about Krang on television. No more Krang.
Sir? Isn't that kind of just Discord from My Little Pony?
The only thing stopping me from calling this worse than the more memorable and nicer looking Velma is the superior Weird Al cameo. Instead of playing Dandruff Tuba, a funny looking nerd found in crowd scenes, he's a recurring character, now goes by Normal Al cause the world is too weird, and has an original song called the One Note Polka. What can I say? I'm a simple man.
Let's go, babe. I'm not paying for this crap.
But don't you want to hear stories about the making of the movie UHF?
Clone High Season 2.
After posting my first impressions video, I haven't stopped thinking about this revival for one of my all-time favorite cartoons on HBO Max and Max. Briefly, it was on both services. One of my next videos will probably revisit the season, but in the meantime, I'd like to pass the spotlight over to the first of my collaborators, as experiencing these new episodes alongside other fans is what made it such a highlight of my 2023. I'm sure you can all be patient in order to hear more of my thoughts. Clone High fans are great at waiting.
And now, a very special episode of the long-awaited and mildly anticipated Clone High.
Hey, I'm Offbeat Kiki. I made that Find Your Voice cover for Nick's Fairly Oddparents retrospective, and I'm permanently scarred by hearing my music over the image of Cosmo Mpreg. Anyway, I'm also an animation-focused video essayist, and Clone High has been one of my favorite series for 10 years now. The original run pulled off a perfect balance of instantly dated Y2K-era pastiche and genuinely tugging at the viewer's heartstrings, ending in a finale I thought would be impossible to follow up on in a satisfying way. However, Season 2 proved me wrong by leaning in harder on both aspects. They turned the insanity up to 11 at times in The Crown, Joan Coming, It's a Cleo world, Spring Broken, and For Your Consideration. They took the piss out of modern reality throughout, but especially with the highly divisive pilot, and they pulled off genuine and emotional moments in Sleepover, Sexy Ed, and the season finale. The best thing about that, though, is none of those episodes were limited to just communicating one aspect of what the show can do. They are always juggling humor and heart, leaving me once again questioning how they managed to write something so audacious and tightly woven. It's a season full of jokes that continue to push boundaries, characters old and new who are easy to love, and commentary on modern day society that blurs the lines and leaves me wondering which biases they're confirming or making fun of at any given moment. My favorite part of it all, though, other than finally learning the meaning behind Wesley, was watching Joan finally truly becoming the main character. It was a perfect exit from the love triangle format and expertly opened up the story for more seasons. Clone High Season 2 was one of my favorite parts of last year. I also got to meet Nick IRL and play through the entirety of the Simpsons arcade game in one sitting. It's a joy to be friends with someone who loves Clone High just as much as I do. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Hailey's on it.
The newest Disney cartoon starring a teenage girl created by two white guys has a fine presentation and a likable cast. But this is a case where I have lots of tiny little gripes that just pile on and on. The intro sets up the world-ending stakes, and that Hailey's gonna complete a long list of goals in her journal, but not how checking them all off is the key to saving the day. The premise pushes Hailey to come out of her shell, and while she does struggle with nerves or social interactions in relatable ways, it's convenient that she just so happens to be great at horse riding, singing, and gymnastics. There's also robots and time travel baked into the core concept, yet from what I watched, this is mostly a slice of life show with occasional sci-fi obstacles. That's fine, that's what the crew is more interested in making, but it's disappointing how these elements are available but underutilized.
But have fun trying to beat me on your puny battle bike, kid. Make sure you take off your training wheels. No offense, Carl.
Hailey's on It has glimpses of heart and an original comedic identity. It's personally not enough to outweigh episodes that take 7 out of 11 minutes to reach the inciting incident, filled with ideas lifted from prior and current Disney Channel hits to a manufactured degree. Songs in every episode, a carpe diem spirit, mischievous twins, a goofy little guy who thinks he's powerful, and a will they won't they that's probably endgame. I was surprised when they confirmed gay people exist, after I watched a DDR episode that could have been written 15 years ago. They're really in touch with today's kids.
How it started? How it's going?
Okay, I stand corrected on the whole representation thing. As a little addendum, season 1 concluded on an overdramatic cliffhanger, suddenly introducing a new love triangle at the last minute.
Hailey, there's something I need to tell you.
Ooh, this sounds important. Hi, I'm Sanjay.
The good news is, for the past decade or so, most story-driven Disney cartoons have gotten proper endings, even when they've been canceled. The Ghost and Molly McGee tacked one onto the tail end of their second season, and it was the best new episode I watched this year. So I'm sure this newcomer will be permanently removed from Disney+. The entire show hinged on whether or not Hailey will kiss her friend Scott in order for her list to be completed, thereby saving the future. Right now, this cartoon ends with the Cuck episode. I'm sorry, the Emmy-nominated Cuck episode. Look, I may not be much of a Hailey's On It fan, but as a certified beta plush owner, it definitely deserved better. Weird Al also deserved better too.
Hi, I'm world-famous celebrity Weird Al Yankovic.
Futurama Season 8 on Hulu.
Fundamentally, this is the same show that ended 10 and 20 years ago, with some minor upgrades and downgrades. I think Futurama looks a little worse every time it returns, and that's still true here. I feel like Hulu was just cutting corners in general, not only with the voice cast. The designs are still top-notch, but the character acting is more static, like expressions won't change to fit a shift in emotion.
But Fry will become a vegetable.
Yum! I mean sad.
In these 10 episodes, I noticed a lot of reflection on the show's history, place and culture, and societal changes. We got a lot of stories featuring relationships that have rarely or never been explored, an increase in continuity nods, and the return of fan-favorite storylines or characters. Okay, I know I was clamoring for the whale biologist's return.
I'm a bear biologist.
Even in the admittedly funny meta-episode about the show cheating death, Fry and Leela were cemented as a couple, having romantic moments in almost every episode.
What if I can't handle this?
Leela, I know absolutely nothing, but I know one thing. You'll be great.
The exception was The Prince and the Product, where their romance is suddenly tested in what's supposed to be a parody of a typical premise. I don't think it was played up melodramatically enough to appear intentionally bad from the start.
I was under a spell.
Really? A magic spell?
No, a science spell.
Of course.
It's actually the wraparound for an anthology episode where the Planet Express crew star in extended toy commercials. It got some decent laughs out of me, but I've never liked when these are excuses to write the cast out of character, get gimmicky with the humor, and not feel futuristic. And the same also applies to their COVID-19 episode, Rage Against the Vaccine. Elsewhere, current events were used as jumping off points for plots. But I hope you like ultra-specific pandemic references! There's also Hermes infidelity jokes, one episode after his loving family starred in a really sweet and laid-back Christmas episode. Why is this what his character's been reduced to? This run was truly a mixed bag. It's about on par with the middle of the Comedy Central era, and many of its issues are still intact. But when they pair high-concept sci-fi stories about simulated universes or self-replicating nanobots with solid character conflicts, Futurama can still knock it out of the park after 8 seasons. I hope that it gets better with time. If you're wondering why I'm calling it Season 8 and not 11, well, do I have the video for you.
Fade to black.
Praise Petey.
In this freeform original, a New York City girl moves to the south to take over her deceased father's town-wide comet-worshipping doomsday cult. Minus some blood sacrifices, it's not too hectic, violent, or raunchy for an adult cartoon. A nice change of pace. This thing is confident in its characters, has clever continuity, and is willing to go for weird gags like a major character being plankofwood.png. The downside is, I don't really care. Yes, they do have a screaming goat in every episode. Between the oblivious cult members, scheming elders, and Petey's smug friends and family from the city, it was hard to find someone to root for that wasn't grounded in a gag. The hook is in the premise, not the cast. Unfortunately, the highest praise I can give is that it didn't annoy me. Not sure that this needed to be animated for the most part, but the style they went with is super appealing. Peep this gorgeous swamp and these blobby extras with Pac-Man mouse. This is where Praise Petey became Praise Peak. PP for short.
Captain Fall.
From the co-creator of Pickle and Peanut comes a dramedy that follows a naive patsy hired as a cruise ship captain that's a front for a human trafficking scheme. I don't have anything too nice to say, so I came up with a solution. Have Toonrific Tariq share his thoughts and then say not nice things about it.
Alright, so NICKtendo told me to keep this advertiser friendly, so that means no N-words. He said he'll say it instead. Hey man, I don't know what y'all heard, but Captain Fall kinda hard, bruh. I ain't gonna hold you. I kinda just put this on to see what it was, but I really found myself not exactly laughing that hard, admittedly, but instead getting really attached to the main character. Jonathan Fall, this poor, gullible man.
I think my penis just ejaculated.
He's like if you took a super well-intentioned and forgiving character like Phineas from Phineas and Ferb, and you just kind of threw him in the middle of a world where everybody hates each other and all have selfish intentions. Choose your fighter. This is probably the most earnest character I've seen all year. He's forgiving, he's optimistic, like I said, he's gullible. You know he's not gonna succeed, but the small wins they give him, even when they ultimately mean nothing, they still make me smile because he's so damn happy. I was also really fascinated by the look of this cartoon. You know, like Netflix animation is practically underwater at this point. Oh, my fault, bro. Animation is practically underwater at this point. Stay woke. But all their shows seem to look better and better, depending on your taste. The backgrounds have these great textures. The colors are so unified. Nothing looks too bright or dark. The designs aren't anything particularly iconic. They all just kind of look like dudes, but it's clean. The rigs are great. It's a nice looking show. If you have some spare time, I say dabble a little bit in that Captain Fall and see if you bang with it. It can't hurt. Hey, but if you start that first season and you like it and you want to finish it, just know they ain't coming back. I'd rather you find out through me. Now you say stuff, Nick.
Okay, so I agree with Tariq that the colorful and graphic art direction is terrific, it was unique enough to keep me watching, and the main engine behind the series works, I just don't care for much else. Most of the humor borders on uncomfortable more than funny, like the sole joke of multiple scenes is just surprise murder, and the heavy slow burn they're aiming for has low energy results. They often cut away from the main characters for long stretches of an episode to show the far-reaching impact of the scheme that Jonathan's gotten tied up in. Instead of feeling mysterious or surprising, they seem more so poorly paced, featuring one-offs that will never be seen again, all while a subplot featuring an FBI agent on Fall's tail feels underdeveloped. Wait, cutaways. Maybe that's another reason the Family Guy liked this.
You can't leave, man. That's desertion. They'll come after you like Peter went after that hockey coach. Oop, no clip. Oop, thought we had a clip.
Adventure Time, Fionna and Cake.
In retrospect, Distant Lands lacked its own identity as a sequel to Adventure Time, not lasting long enough to define itself as a prequel, sequel, or finale. But this new 10-episode half-hour max series is different. Fionna Campbell, one of many aged-up and gender-swapped versions of the cast, now works dead-end jobs in a bland, magic-free reality with her house pet Cake. They cross paths with Simon Petrikov, formerly the Ice King, who similarly feels out of touch with his world and seeks to escape from the shadow of his past self. While being pursued by a powerful new foe, the trio hops between alternate universes that provide sequels or what-if scenarios to prior storylines. The premise throws a lot of elements together, but embodies the spirit of fanfiction, giving purpose to in-universe OCs. Being the first Adventure Time project aimed at adults allows it to more outwardly address depression and building relationships, peppering in some swears and gore without feeling forced.
Finn, are you okay? Your back's kinda...
Huh? Does it look cool?
I'm fine with a difference in the tone or soundtrack cause this feels like its own thing. It naturally slipped into a half-hour format too, reminds me of the miniseries structurally. just with down-to-earth subplots in Fiona's world to remind us what the protagonists are fighting for. This is a terrible jumping on point for newcomers, although not only does it reunite lots of guest artists from previous CM projects, it utilizes callbacks to showcase the dangers of living out your fantasies and running away from reality.
A Wish made this Farm World universe. A Wish made this Funny Shape universe. This one already existed.
I had no idea where it was going, and I'm still not sure where they'll take it, but I loved Fionna and Cake. As a fan, it's satisfying to see the return of the Cheers theme being used to represent Simon's grasp on reality a decade later, but even more so to see it recontextualized as a beacon of toxic nostalgia. Do you really want to go where everyone knows your name?
Cheers is filmed before a live. Cheers is filmed before. Cheers is filmed before a live studio audience.
Also, stream the reboot to the sequel of Cheers, now on Paramount+. You know, I actually think Frasier is alright, but it's no Frasier. At least we got to see him argue with Jake the dog's voice actor.
Would you pick a frickin' spot?
I'm so sorry.
You know, a guy comes into a fancy restaurant all alone on Valentine's Day, high as a kite. He expects to have a nice, quiet evening.
Young Love.
This Max sequel to Sony Animation's Oscar-winning short, Hair Love, reunites the family, showing a music producer and hairstylist couple in their early 30s raising their spirited 6-year-old daughter in Chicago. I appreciate having a slice-of-life cartoon that's able to get a little real and adult, while still having a dash of fantasy and remaining appropriate for families. They dive into racial and parental expectations, paired with some solid character acting and an impressive hip-hop score. Big props for having a presentation that follows in the footsteps of its predecessor on a TV budget.
I'll be just fine. Just hit a bump.
It's gonna be bumpy getting back into the groove. Might take some time, but, you know, we'll figure it out.
Now, if only the stories were interesting, the dialogue wasn't overly quippy, the annoying characters weren't annoying to the audience, and the humor didn't try so hard with its innuendos and references.
Here comes the usher.
That ain't Usher.
I respect what Young Love is trying to do, but it was such a slog to see how they do it. This could really use a season 2 to iron things out, but as it stands, the high point for me is how the Sony Pictures Animation logo was very clearly cut out at the start of the intro.
Castlevania Nocturne.
What's up, everyone? I've been asked by my buddy NICKtendo to say a few words about Castlevania Nocturne, mostly because Nick is allergic to seeing a punch.
Well, you know what, D'Angelo Edwards of Hats Off Media? You're kinda right.
I'm a big fan of all the Powerhouse cartoons on Netflix, except like Blood of Zeus and the first part of He-Man. Those can kick rocks. But one of my favorite things they did was Castlevania. Great characters, amazing animation, and a soundtrack that doesn't quit. So when I heard that they were adapting the story of my favorite Belmont for the next show, I might have been a little excited. And now that it's out, I can say that that excitement was pretty justified. Castlevania Nocturne follows the story of Richter Belmont as he battles vampires during the American Revolution, which meant two things. One, this was going to be a lot different than the original story of the game, and two, slavery was going to be mentioned a lot. This was mainly brought up with major changes done to Annette, who's gone from Richter's meek damsel in distress to magic-wielding revolutionary. And while this kind of change can scare off a certain type of fan, those types deserve nothing. So how does this stack up to the original? While I think that the first series overall had the better pace and more interesting characters, this season is no slouch. Plenty of fun to be had here with the cast. Richter is still great, though it takes a minute for him to warm up, and all of the vampires are evil and loving it. However, while making Annette more interesting and taking the time to go over some genuinely interesting African folklore is cool, I do wish more time was spent on the Belmont side of things. Like for me, all the stuff I was interested in seeing started happening halfway through the season. I just think the balance could have been better, but the animation is still top-notch. Though a few earlier scenes look a little wonkier than usual, when the budget starts budgeting, you are in for a treat. Overall, this season is a lot of fun, if not a bit overstuffed. Luckily for Powerhouse, I don't mind big portions. Hey Nick, when I say that part, can you show the vampire with the big butt? Okay, thanks, bye, I'm out.
Scavengers Reign.
Ooh, you know who would be good to cover this relentlessly imaginative and Metroidian odyssey from Max? The guy who made an entire video about the Just Stamp the Ticket Man.
Okay.
Scavengers Reign is obviously not related to The Simpsons, but I'm here to tell you about it anyway. This show is so dang cool. The premise of Scavengers Reign is extremely simple. This tale of crew members crash landing on an alien planet and their struggle to survive. It sets up a very straightforward goal for the characters, and we follow along with their journey. There are 3 main groups, who each have their own personal struggles that are explained via flashbacks. However, if you're looking for a super detailed plot with interpersonal drama, you're gonna be disappointed. There's not even much conflict until the second half of the season. But Scavengers Reign is just filled with vibes. The animation is so detailed and gorgeous. All this unique flora and fauna that the visual designers created. The characters wander from one fascinating scenario to the next, using their wits and resourcefulness to get through. As beautiful as the alien planet is, it's filled with an equal amount of danger. Tense encounters with fantastical and nightmarish creatures. You find yourself in awe of their problem-solving skills, where you're like, how the heck did they think of that? Like, this character Ozzy is a genius. Love her. And they take the time to allow the characters to genuinely take in the world around them. It has some of that Avatar grandeur to its world building, except this show tackles it from more of a grittier outsider perspective. If you're into sci-fi, Scavengers Reign is a must-watch. If you're someone who's looking for adult animation not in the comedy sphere, I also strongly recommend it. Scavengers Reign is a breath of fresh air and would love to see more shows like it in the future.
Man, I'm kind of disappointed that he didn't talk about how the creators were inspired by vor. A big chunk of his Simpsons videos involve fetishes, so I'm a little surprised.
Scott Pilgrim takes off.
Back in 2011, I remember reading a Nintendo Power article about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and getting excited about how they put coins in the movie. That's my favorite Nintendo reference. Then it took me 13 years to watch it, but now I have, I love it, and I guess I'm covering an anime now.
You know Sonic the Hedgehog?
Whoa, they referenced Mulligan. That's awesome! From Science Saru, who animated this, and most importantly this, and co-written by original author Brian Lee O'Malley, comes a Netflix adaptation that acts more as an alternate take on the material than a straight remake. Without spoiling anything, it reminded me of Garfield minus Garfield. He is gone, yet you can always feel his presence. This assumes you have a basic understanding of what Scott Pilgrim is, and I immediately wanted to compare it to the film, since it keeps the celebrity cast of VAs and non-VAs, but lacks the iconic and relentless pacing.
Is Scott here?
You know what? He just left.
However, it was easy to see it as its own thing due to the plot deviations, and because the look is so gorgeous, colorful, and versatile, no matter the tone.
No, I fear change!
There is some cheeky meta-commentary on adapting the story to other mediums, but this is mostly an excuse for O'Malley to re-examine or redeem a cast he created 20 years ago, exploring them as characters rather than a means to an end for Scott's story. Compared to the graphic novels, some backstories and subtleties are thrown out the window just for a few funny subplots. There is a messy charm to how much this feels like someone experimenting with their OCs, finding new dynamics from throwing characters together or seeing what might happen if they aged in real time after being created 20 years ago.
Scott?
But old.
No, even older.
It was easy to overlook minor flaws, like some occasional flat line deliveries, or the animation being more in line with the Japanese dub, because I was having such a good time hanging out in this visually stunning world and seeing new sides of its inhabitants. Always rad seeing Western character designs animated with Eastern sensibilities.
Come on!
Ironically, I do think some of Ramona's development is overshadowed by how much of her arc is devoted to building up too many other people. Her resolution makes more sense in theory than practice. It was still a breath of fresh air to finally have Ramona's perspective at the forefront. Even the video game references come off as more natural instead of feeling designed to cater to normies. I understand feeling disappointment over Scott Pilgrim Takes Off not being the straightforward adaptation that it was advertised as, but I think it's cool that each medium continues to bring something new to the franchise, and this is in conversation with all of them. Watching it made me a true Scotthead. Somehow an anime is one of the best Canadian cartoons ever. Also, congrats to Weird Al for finally redeeming himself this year.
This footage now stands as a first-hand account of how the movie-making dream can become a nightmare.
Before I present my 2023 selections from best to worst, I'm here to present the NICKtendo Awards, celebrating the most esoteric achievements in animation from this specific year. The Most Distracting Animation Award goes to Mech Cadets. Why was this accurate 2000s cartoon parody only on screen for a few seconds? Go back! Go back! The Biggest Oversight Award goes to Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai. I noticed that Lion's Gizmo is supposed to be capturing the emotions out through his gibberish, which the audience usually shouldn't understand, are fully written out, like they would have been in the script. They only appeared when I manually turned on subtitles too.
I'll hold them off long enough for you to escape.
The Worst Needle Drop of the Year award goes to Blue Eye Samurai. There's nothing wrong with playing Battle without honor or humanity, but I think if a licensed song was in the Mario movie, it should never be used again. The Best Piece of Sound Design award goes to My Adventures with Superman. The Best Promotional Tweet Posted This Year award goes to Twilight of the Gods. Krabopolis had the runner-up. The Why Did You Use the Same Stock Music as Cartoon Network's Old Adventure Time Promos award goes to Captain Laserhawk.
New episode Monday at 7:30, 6:30 Central, only on Cartoon Network.
Now D'Angelo Edwards of Hats Off Media pointed this out in one of his own videos recently, but he gave me permission to steal his joke and show it here too. Just watch, he really did it.
You can't show that Nick.
The Most Unfortunate Simpsons episode for the creator of a show to have also written award goes to Digman. This one kind of speaks for itself. The I accidentally put a silhouette of this character in part 3 of my Fairly Oddparents retrospective to foreshadow this video before I decided to cut their segment award goes to Kiff. I still enjoy my time with it though. You got some pretty funny and relatable childhood antics right here.
What now?
This is it. This is collecting.
Now it's time for my Kiff List 2023 ranking.
Mulligan, Velma, Hailey's on it, Captain Fall, Young Love, Praise Petey, Futurama Season 8 on Hulu, Castlevania Nocturne, Shape Island, Fired on Mars, Moon Girl, and Devil Dinosaur, Clone High Season 2, Scavengers Reign, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, Adventure Time, Fionna and Cake. Ted.
Usually, I steer clear of anything with real people for these annual rankings, all 2 of them, as reality scares me. Although, considering a few other shows I want to cover from this year, I thought it made sense to showcase a live-action CGI hybrid and an R-rated film adaptation done right.
Talk about the right to bear arms. Hey, bear arms, bearing arms, right? Oh man, everybody's missing all this great stuff.
While they may be classic Boston cinema, I'm not big on either Ted film. I think the character works better in short-form content, as both of the movies peak with their opening credits. This prequel is set in 1993 after the popularity of the magic talking bear Ted has waned. So he joins his owner John in high school, surrounded by a conservative dad, liberal young adult, and innocent mother. These are all, let's call them familiar archetypes that Seth MacFarlane explored in his previous sitcoms. But the characters feel a little more like people instead of, say, loose roles taken up by actors.
I have a fun surprise for you.
What is it?
I've hidden a heat bar somewhere in this house.
Can I get a hint?
Oh, I can't do this to you. It's in the hamper.
The Bennetts all have dreams they left behind, relationships they regret, and thoughts they try to repress. Ted's 15 minutes of fame both inspires and endangers those around him.
Hello, Ted.
There's time to dig into these traits throughout the 7 episodes, as there's no need to bother having all the set pieces that a big studio comedy requires. Each one probably didn't need to be 30 to 50 minutes long, but I never felt like they dragged or didn't feature the title character enough, because I cared about the whole family. All of the sex jokes and pointless conversations between John and Ted are surrounded by genuine emotion.
We are gonna do what they do in the movies. Go over there tonight, stand on a lawn, and declare your love for all the world to hear.
Yeah. Wow, that was so not good.
Yeah, her dad really did not care that you love her.
I like pairing low-stakes stories with hyper-expensive CG animation on par with the features. I'm impressed by how the view screen software the team used combined aspects of previs and mocap to give Ted life on set. I'm very happy that this ended up being a huge hit on
Peacock, baby!
So NBC Universal is forced to keep spending money on it. I'm not a huge MacFarlane fan, but this stupidly warm series feels like it finally strikes the balance he's been trying to reach his entire career. Just word of advice. If you ever end up in the Ted universe, please don't talk to anyone working in a public setting. They all start conversations kind of like this.
Did you know that textile polymers are so thin nowadays that someone could be wearing an adult diaper and no one would even know it? What?
Hazbin Hotel.
One Hazbin Hotel is written about in the history books as the independent adult pilot that was able to make the jump to Amazon Prime with the help of Bento Box and A24. Please remember that I once sat next to the pilot's writer and series creator dressed as Pickle Nick before he was unceremoniously murdered at the MomoCon 2019 Animation Showcase panel.
Good times, good times.
It's wild to go from the sloppy comedic timing and inconsistent goopy animation of the pilot to the stunning colors and refined character acting of this full first season. The cast of Broadway stars give it their all, and the story,
I've been up all night trying to figure out why the hotel isn't working.
During an overpopulation crisis, Charlie Morningstar, the Princess of Hell, conceives of a hotel to reform sinners to make them fit for heaven before the realm undergoes another purge. Based on the premise, I expected to see new guests checking in every episode, while the staff tries to figure out how a soul can be redeemed. And I think staying close to that concept generated the strongest moments. Seeing these misfits bond and grow has a bit of a workplace sitcom vibe, even though a lot of the humor leans on sex references and swearing that makes some of the dialogue sound samey. It finds purpose in a character like Angel Dust, a porn star who seeks an escape from his abusive manager. I was so out of the loop with this cartoon that this Phineas and Ferb edit was my first exposure to his big number. Part of the reason why Angel's Spotlight episode worked so well was because it was isolated from the wider story arc surrounding the politics of heaven and hell. They try to do these intimate character plots, but they feel like they're missing beats or don't earn their emotional moments because they're interrupted by important new people we're suddenly supposed to care about. This hurts the songs, especially when they abruptly begin.
Oh, what's the matter, Fossil? Too senile to make a real power grab?
You better show some respect!
Look, I have a handful of superficial visual complaints about the occasionally awkward camera moves, crazy creatures clashing with the humanoid angels, Lucifer looking more like Charlie's brother than father, or how these guys are supposed to be a deer and spider. That and reports of animators being paid indie wages on a professional production, which is disappointing if true. It's easy to clown on something that tackles sweeping moral themes while representing a lot of random internet humor and sexy man culture I've never vibed with. But there's a personal, character-driven story that I got invested in, buried underneath a heap of lore. At least they have 3 more seasons to figure things out.
Yay, pain!
In the know.
Mike Judge's Bandera Entertainment and Shadow Machine's stop motion division teamed up for a 6-episode workplace comedy on Peacock.
Baby, Peacock!
It's about an insecure and performative NPR host who interviews live-action celebrities. It's like a reverse Space Ghost Coast to Coast because they use the most expensive animation style possible instead of the cheapest to have semi-pointless conversations.
Did you ever think in the middle of a bout, I wish I could just look my opponent in the eye and say, I am enough?
I do that when I smash his face.
These are a fun novelty, but the interviewees usually don't get introduced, they largely lack standout moments, and are overshadowed by the surrounding storylines. Not everyone in the ensemble cast of radio station staffers are immediately likable. Fabian got on my nerves at first, because being an aggressively woke millennial buzzkill was her only bit, but she's among the characters we learn the most about. Like Fabian's beliefs prevent her from being with her caring family in a crushing Thanksgiving episode.
We know you're boycotting non-Indigenous holidays, but home's just not the same without you, Ashley. You sent us that disturbing article about factory farming. Mom read it too.
She did? Of course, honey. We read all the articles you sent. I miss you guys.
Most of the characters have well-observed and complicated personal or family histories. To its detriment, this is a show about New Yorkers where they don't have the budget to show New York City, only leaving the studio 3 times. This means the animation focuses on capturing specific idiosyncrasies in the postures and movements of each puppet. The comedic relief characters like frat bro intern Chase and out-of-touch film critic Sandy are particular standouts.
You know that law where you can't yell fire in a theater? That's because of me.
Maybe I'd like In the Know more if I was familiar with the smug and pretentious NPR world it's poking fun at. But as is, it doesn't come together, and stands as being more interesting than entertaining for me. I haven't stopped thinking about this line for months though.
Dude, Patrick from SpongeBob has a weird voice and he's one of the hottest men alive.
Yeah, I mean that's true.
Megamind Rules.
Covering Kung Fu Panda: The Dragon Knight back in 2022 set my expectations for the quality of animation and storytelling I could expect from future DreamWorks TV adaptations. Megamind's big return was touted as a long-awaited sequel, but the Doom Syndicate TV movie and subsequent streaming series stripped away what made the first film stand out.
Presentation!
The number of locations is limited, the streets are empty, models are repeated, the titular villains lack a menacing presence, the new kid sidekick forces social media into a retro setting, and everyone was recast with decent sound-alikes.
DJ, put another stanky groove in my pocket.
That's on top of undoing Megamind's development between his quietly friend-zoned pal Roxanne and Minion, newly renamed Chum to sidestep Despicable Me comparisons.
He's been acting out of character since we got here.
Moving into Megamind Rules, I do like that Roxy finally gets the status quo change she's always deserved by becoming Metro City's mayor. The theme song by Adam Lambert is an earworm. Villains like Destruction Worker, along with some of the Doom Syndicate, revisit designs scrapped from the original feature. And there are fitting character moments and plot lines within this average Villain of the Week superhero comedy.
I often like to imagine our lives are a television show on a popular streaming service.
Peacock, baby!
Watching through all 16 episodes of Season 1 was always a bit of a chore, but the premises slowly become clever, the social media angle is dropped, and there's genuinely good bits, like the prideful town of Little Delaware or Eccentric Eddie, this weirdo loved by the heroes he teams up with during heists.
And codename Eccentric Eddie's here too, and I brought snacks.
Brilliant play, Eddie.
The Doom Syndicate gradually loses prominence to Maki, a villain, Megamind's original mentor who seeks to sway him back to the side of evil, turning his city and allies against him. He becomes an excellent antagonist, playing a key role in rebuilding Roxanne's romance with the reformed villain. Megamind's original writers return to develop this follow-up, and their influence really shines throughout the second half of the season.
As I once told my little blue pupil, the key to supervillainy is presentation.
Maki, a villain, is also played by Adam Lambert. Wouldn't you know, getting a current vocalist for Queen to sing was a good idea. It's cheaper, it's goofier, and the final shot is really bad. But Megamind Rules gradually does the first film justice, which is hard to believe based on how it begins.
I think you've gone viral, sir.
At its core, this is a middle-of-the-road tie-in I'd only recommend to the most hardcore fans. But you will see Megamind like you've never seen him before. White. I'm less of an X-Man fan and more of a man of X, the Everything app. They really want you to buy their merchandise. Nevertheless, I was quite impressed by Marvel Animation's continuation of the 90s X-Men the Animated Series, looking at it as a revival. I admire the approach of trying to make the version of the show that you remember.
Am I going to war or a circus?
What'd you expect? Black leather?
They keep the cheesy melodrama straight out of a soap opera, but scenes can be slower, more violent, and place more focus on political intrigue related to the image of mutants in a prejudiced society now that the rating has been bumped up to TV-14. It's helped by getting downtime with these characters before the secret past and shocking betrayals come into play. I dig the mix between new and returning voices as well. No one sounds out of place. The 2D animation by Studio Mir brings a consistent level of flair to the lighting, acting, and effects, all sorely missing from its predecessor, assisted by CG layouts. I still routinely think about tiny elements, like Cyclops using his optic blast to slow his descent. Making this a period piece was an inspired choice too. The campy casual outfits, the locations, the era-appropriate references, they're all nice touches that don't overload the nostalgia. Gotta give them props for the high-quality pixel art too. I do have a few gripes, like this revival expects that you're intimately familiar with how the original run ended, and what arcs had already covered from the comics. I saw quite a few episodes in reruns growing up, yet I was regularly looking up to see if a character had previously appeared. I'm also fine with the multi-part storytelling and control nods to the greater Marvel universe, even if some storylines or characters are slightly overshadowed. But I found myself wishing that a few plot points were set up earlier, or fight scenes had tighter pacing. That, and I'd like to know what's up with the showrunner who was fired weeks before the series launched. As far as X-Men 97 goes, this first season set a great example for future cartoon revivals, while mostly serving as a successful jumping on point for new viewers. I'm excited to see more arcs from after 1998 be adapted, something only a project like this can accomplish. I still need to watch X-Men's 2 through 96 though.
To me, my X-Men.
Good times.
Putting the super choppy animation aside, this is a cool looking show. The line work is angular and messy, there's a mix of painted and textured backgrounds, and they push the angles and expressions to be really dynamic. The 8th episode is a superhero parody that goes for bold outlines, shading, and textures inspired by comics, and it's so much fun to look at.
I know you didn't just touch my sandwich with those nasty baby hands. Put my pickle down, boy! Didn't I just say...
The voice acting is strong, they tackle relevant topics like gang violence and gentrification, and the comedy is...
You think you painting the 16th chapel or something?
I think you mean the Sistine Chapel?
No, I mean the chapel on 16th Street. The 16th chapel.
It kinda had to fight to get a laugh out of me. I'd like to be the one to say that this didn't deserve all the hate it received, like the characters aren't all stereotypes and care for each other as a family deep down. But then again, they aren't saying anything with the gun-toting, drug-dealing baby in the hood. I think the biggest issue here is that Netflix chose to label and market this as a reboot of Good Times. Yes, that Good Times.
I thought our family had to win this stupid contest to prove we were just as good as the Evans of old. But the truth is, we're the Evans of new.
It is about a black family descended from the Evans fighting the system and barely getting by in the projects, but showrunner Renata Shepard said it could no longer be soft and sweet because it's adult animation. This statement is 100% true and isn't at all a closed-minded way to approach making cartoons for mature audiences. Bringing a live-action sitcom to this medium is a cool idea, but it's squandered here because it only adapted the basic concept. Good Times, more like occasionally intriguing but overall a disappointing reboot. Times. So I watched this throwback to 2000 sports comedy starring Adam Pally, where he competes in a bowling tournament with a 5-year-old Girl Scout, while being tracked down by government agents, avoiding a flamboyant bounty hunter, and teaming up with his Jewish mother and FBI agent sister to confront his abandonment issues with his bowling star father, who left him in a TJ Maxx as a child. Also, Knuckles the Echidna is there.
What? Knuckles.
Paramount Plus's breakout hit Knuckles isn't a very good adaptation of the Sonic the Hedgehog character. Most of the iconography he's associated with is confined to the snazzy opening sequence, all the other movie characters only appear in the first episode, and based on Sonic 3, very little set up the future of this cinematic universe, besides the introduction of
the flames of disaster!
Issues with the human side of the first 2 films were carried over. The pacing in the back half is slow, the hit-or-miss humor often undercuts drama, and the soundtrack is nothing special. Sega once again took influence from its competitor by snagging a generic needle drop from the Super Mario Bros. Movie. However, with a micromanaged corporate mascot franchise like this, I am thrilled this miniseries exists.
Regardless of how you feel about childhood abandonment, and I'm against it.
Me too.
The deals at TJ Maxx cannot be beat.
No, I wish my dad left me at a TJ Maxx.
I get my sick kicks from seeing Knuckles be introduced to Blink-182 and Pretty Woman with theatrical quality animation. The live-action cast is crazy stacked too. You got Julian Barrett from Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and that guy from the Sonic 2 movie music video in here. There's finally humans as entertaining as the slightly out-of-character talking animals. You could take away the brand association, and I'd still like it.
Take it, Susie's dad!
You didn't tell me you were gonna throw it.
I think the goal was to tell the story of Knuckles finding purpose on his new home of Earth by drawing parallels to the struggles of Adam Pally's character Wade, as both lost their father and faced betrayal. That's how we get Wade's Jewish mom sympathizing with the destruction of Knuckles' tribe.
Our tribe has been through some tough times too. He's basically Jewish.
This strategy kind of gives the warrior presence in a miniseries where he's often off-screen. I don't think a bowling tournament in Reno should have gotten more screen time than Knuckles fighting a giant robot during the grand finale, but at that point, I was already invested in Wade's family and their campy drama. If there's another season, my pitch is for the Echidna to team up with another star of Paramount Plus, Frasier. I need him to return again. I appreciated how the simple villains showed the consequences of the military working with Sonic and friends by being rogue and frustrated government agents. There's some nice world building in here. Sometimes you just gotta find it within a rock opera filled with physical puppets, pyrotechnics, Michael Bolton, and a villain from the games dropping blatant product placement. Not that I'm complaining. What a great waste of time.
Then I might hit Facebook Marketplace up. Might be some deals on some freaking cool stuff.
Mr. Birchum.
Adam Carolla's cranky conservative woodshop teacher persona from his radio appearances and Crank Yankers has morphed into a cranky conservative cartoon on Daily Wire Plus, featuring content that stars Matt Walsh, Matt Walsh, Matt Walsh, Matt Walsh, and Matt Walsh, but not Matt Walsh. This feels like writing and designing an animated sitcom based on someone else's description of one. Everything you'd expect is present, but it doesn't all work together. Birchum is framed as a Hank Hill-like figure stuck in his ways, but he rarely has to learn a lesson or compromise. He lives in a version of Los Angeles where people pretending to be veterans to get free discounts and power tools with Bluetooth integration are major issues, barely resembling the area besides a few scant references.
You keep my wife's name out of your damn mouth!
There's multiple conflicts that are resolved because Birchum's students or family just happen to act in a way that aligns with his values. They have him fantasize about an old burly mascot, but do nothing with how he sympathizes with the old outdated views of this spokesperson, voiced by Patrick Warburton, complete with unbalanced audio.
My wife dragged me out here to do some stupid charity work.
Two words that should never go together. Charity and work, like women and opinions.
Why did this line sound better in the trailer?
Charity and work. Two words that should never go together, like women and opinions.
This is what's happening when episodes aren't stuffed with paper-thin storylines or cutaway gags. Plus, how can you hate someone who's a Navy vet, has a supportive daughter, and a black best friend? He's impossible to criticize.
Epic rant, Birchum.
On the production end, it's clear that the Spain-based studio Wise Blue was not given the time or resources needed to deliver the primetime style look they were aiming for. The characters' expressions are very subdued, like Birchum cycles between looking annoyed and really annoyed. Many backgrounds don't look correctly proportioned, like this shot where the wife shrinks down as she walks straight to enter a door that's behind her. I do appreciate that the best animated scene is the Yowie Dream sequence, but the Nightmare musical number that's trying to evoke Pink Floyd's The Wall deserves more attention. It reminds me more of the freaky Inside Out 2 song. Between the unsatisfying plots and unfinished sound design, Mr. Birchum feels like one of the least professional things I've ever covered on this channel. Despite being aligned with Daily Wire Plus, I can't fault most of the team involved with this for taking a paycheck, even though it's always distracting to hear Johnny Test's voice actor use his Johnny Test voice.
Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Mr. Birchum. Three of a kind, really, as far as I'm concerned.
Next!
Like the second episode of this show, I have chosen to end this segment with an out-of-place tribute to our veterans.
The Fairly Odd Parents, A New Wish.
Watching the later seasons of The Fairly OddParents was frustrating, because it felt like the creative team became selective about what stuck around. Foop from Season 7 would continue to appear, while his counterpart character Poof from Season 6 mysteriously vanished. With the first season of this surprisingly stellar CG revival, the showrunners have slowly started to bring everything back. Through a new God Kid, they check in with tons of side characters 20 years later, remind viewers of many convoluted rules, and even touch upon ideas that rarely got to be explored or debut late in the original show's run.
Hey kid, I'm Pooh. Well, at least I was. I changed my name to Perry. Check the threads, huh? I'm your new fairy godparent.
Some stories and cast members are underdeveloped, but I was absolutely delighted to see there was a great attention to detail to not only rebuilding the show, but also naturally expanding on it, with a new setting and more magical creatures, doing things I always wondered about as a kid. I'll cover Season 1 more extensively at a later date, but in the meantime, I truly hope this team gets to make more.
Wait. They're closing this thing out on a fart joke? Oh, they better give us a Season 2!
Now to share their perspective, we have Wyatt Reviews? Look, I know every YouTube collab has small creators you've never heard of, but even I don't know who this guy is.
Wyatt Reviews, Wyatt Reviews, Wyatt Reviews. Hello everybody, as you likely know, my name is Wyatt Reviews. Nick, play the theme song, my boy. Thank you. Thank you, NICKtendo, for having me on. Me and Grenade, my eerily quiet dog sidekick, will be reviewing The Fairly OddParents, A New Wish. This series says goodbye to the tried and true likes of Timmy Turner for the new character, Hazel. Played by Ashley Crystal Hairston, Hazel offers a unique twist to children's humor. Her signature raunchy catchphrase, "I'm higher than my credit score," left me confused as to how that matched the target audience. I was left questioning, does she pay off her credit cards? What's her credit limit? And is Discover It really the go-to choice for college students and young adults? The show has a nomination for Best Show Open, but I think it deserves more. I personally believe Season 1, Episode 11, Croc to the Future, should have been up for Best Screenplay. Being stuck back in 2001 definitely gave Hazel and company some catastrophic issues to overcome. I'm just confused as to why they were put in New York and not Dimadelphia. Grenade, what do you think? Well put, although I think that event that you're referencing is a bit distasteful. Anyways, this show has some highs, but some dastardly low lows as well. I feel that at points, like in Operation Birthday Takeback, furthering the plot takes the backseat for some truly crude humor and a guest appearance from Bill. I thoroughly dislike the references to Skibbity Ohio Riz in Lost and Founders Day, but came to love the brave call to action in the series opener, Fly. Again, I'm just not sure why Fly took place in 2001 New York. I'm feeling a 6 out of 10 on this season of The Fairly OddParents. It really would have benefited with more involvement from fan favorite Butch Hartman. Grenade, what do you think? Oh damn, okay, chill dude. Anyways, as a final note, I wanted to bring attention to the lack of beloved character Sparky. Hashtag bring back Sparky. Also, check out this sick clip I hit in the finals. I'm gonna send you a clip of the finals, you better put it in there. Wyatt Reviews, Wyatt Reviews, Wyatt Reviews.
Well, I'm not quite sure who that was, but there were some very obvious inaccuracies in his analysis. Like, Croc to the Future isn't about time manipulation or New York City at all. He just got it mixed up with another episode. Rest assured, that liar won't step foot onto this channel ever again. The dog can stay though.
Wondla.
If you're a fan of quirky female protagonists, then Skydance Animation is the studio for you. Their first series, which debuted on Apple TV+, is another attempt to out-Pixar from its former creative head, John Lasseter. I'm personally not a big fan of anyone who has a sexual misconduct subsection on their Wikipedia page, but that's just me. Based on the first in a trilogy of fantasy novels, we follow Eva, a 16-year-old girl. Age-wise, her design almost has the same energy as...
I'm 12 years old.
She spent her entire life living in an underground bunker with a robotic caretaker. Now she's searching for other human life on an Earth that's been transformed by aliens that range from dangerous, to friendly, to freaky.
I want to see a toast.
Eva barely gets a chance to connect with her party for more than an episode or two. She's too busy searching for answers on her own, which she fails to do multiple times. When things do slow down, it's in this frustrating episode where Eva stubbornly tries to get this hovering convertible over a bridge for most of the runtime. This is pretty high-end CG for TV, but I can tell this is where they save money on locations. Would have been more effective as a live-action rock opera, directed by one of the Lonely Island members instead. Eva does get a chance to bond with this queen, one of multiple cute and doll-like women that contrast with the gruesome and animalistic men. Sorry, only gorgeous females are allowed here. Even compared to the book's terrific illustrations, a lot of the edges have been smoothed off, and I feel that way about the storytelling too. I wasn't surprised to learn that nearly all of the concepts and plot points that grabbed me were lifted from the first novel. Everything in between feels like it was designed by a committee to alienate as few viewers as possible, especially the dialogue. It's not difficult to figure out what Pixar films you're supposed to be reminded of. Sometimes they make it too obvious.
You can fly?
Well, technically, it's gliding.
Hey, Buzz! You're flying!
Wondla certainly does feel like a project that had its showrunner replaced a year after it was announced. Just look at all the writers credited on the pilot. I'd rather watch something that doesn't work but takes risks instead of playing things super safe. But if you've read the books, maybe you got more out of this than me. Let me know in the comments if that was the case. You know that infamous list of cliche comedy lines banned from the Workaholics writer's room? I have a few phrases I'd like to suggest be added.
Okay, I got this. I got it. Nope, I don't got this. I don't got this.
Sausage Party Foodtopia.
Sausage Party is an incredibly important film to the history of labor laws for Canadian animators because its team was treated so poorly. I think it probably played way better to a crowd of theatergoers under the influence back in 2016 than it did to me, diligently taking notes on how generally boring it was, once you get past the gimmick of this being a raunchy Pixar parody with surface-level commentary. At least its success helped other R-rated animated films hit the big screen, like, hey, it got an 8-episode sequel series on Amazon Prime. It doesn't follow up on its cliffhanger, but I honestly thought this was a spike in quality. After revolting against their masters and escaping the supermarket, the rogue products must find a new purpose in a society threatened by rain, crows, heat, and capitalism. This time, the villain is an orange named Julius, who creates and controls an economy, paying off the cops and media to remain in control. I think we all know who this annoying character is mocking.
I mean, Julius is paying all these foods to hand out stickers for it.
Vote for Julius. He's orange.
He's orange!
I don't think it's a hot take to say that I am not particularly interested in watching a non-subtle Donald Trump parody in 2024. Good thing we won't have to worry about this guy anymore. I do appreciate that this storyline slowly introduces more and more of humanity's failings into this new society across the season. Yet the commentary isn't as effective as it could be because it needs to fit the franchise's own food-based lore. Elsewhere, the lore itself is mostly expanded through puns.
Where's the beef? Where's the beef?
Hey, we'll find your beef. What's his name?
Wellington!
I hope you like food-based references and song parodies. I have never been more surprised to not see Weird Al guest star in a cartoon.
We have Bruno Mars, Celine Dion, Machine Gun Jelly, Boy Porridge, Corn, and Pita Ora.
In terms of visual improvements, I was caught off guard by how this was directed. There are worse textures, fewer locations, and the character animation is less energetic. That said, the cinematography takes advantage of the cast's small stature and nails the tone of the parodies they aim for. The characters honestly get to come into their own now that they're free from their animated movie stereotypes. And they're helped by the returning cast, filled with some of the better celebrity voice actors out there. Will Forte plays Jack, the last man on Earth. The apocalypse apparently happened off-screen. He's mostly here to explain the metaphors and poke holes in the world building. But Forte was also Abe Clone High, so I can't find him annoying.
Sorry, it's unclear what you do and don't know.
Jack even has a realistic depiction of a panic attack. I know this because he said,
"I'm having a panic attack!"
I'm sure Foodtopia, not to be confused with Foodtopia, isn't going to save adult animation. But I am now slightly interested in the fate of a character named Sammy Bagel Jr. Make of that what you will. Now it's time to end this segment before I get preachy about how Sausage Party lived up to its name by writing out its only female main character and burying its gays, because one of them was a racial stereotype. It technically became less woke because of woke.
You know, the Humies have a saying, sometimes you gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet.
That's murder!
Primos.
With a company like Disney, I understand the fear that this massive conglomerate would try to sanitize and capitalize on a minority group. When a teaser for this dropped in June 2023, it received a massive level of backlash from Latin Americans for perpetuating stereotypes like improper Spanish, crowded homes, and poorer living conditions in a smoggy city named after earthquakes. However, Primos was heavily inspired by creator Natasha Klein's childhood growing up as a Mexican-American in Southern California with her extended family, struggling to learn Spanish.
It's based on where I grew up in Los Angeles with my sister, brother, and 23 cousins.
23 cousins? That having 12 was rough.
This is her story, and the series was delayed just to alter names, backgrounds, and dialogue to emphasize the setting and intent. Which is disappointing, considering how surface level many criticisms were. Just because the sky is yellow doesn't mean it's Mexico. It's not as if they were taking any inspiration from, like, Breaking Bad.
Some are Breaking Bud.
I think comparisons to The Loud House and its
non-union Mexican equivalent
were dodged by a commitment to its protagonist and central location. While there are siblings obsessed with science, the macabre, or a punk rocker with a girlfriend, Tater is no Lincoln Loud.
Oh, come on. What's a little passionless exploitation between primos?
If we're talking Nicktoons, she's more of a Bessie Higginbottom, always scheming, talking to an imaginary friend, or dreaming of becoming a superhero.
What new final form are we trying out today? You want to be a cowboy, a diver, an intergalactic space explorer?
Not now, Vision Tiger.
Compared to the Mighty Bee, there's a bigger emphasis on emotional beats and character development that builds on the premise. Kinda like how The Ghost of Molly McGee is a modern Disney version of a Billy and Mandy type 2000s cartoon. It's an interesting approach to treat Tater's cousins as a community of recurring characters instead of a single unit. Much of the 19 half hours released so far are spotlight episodes, where Tater gets a glimpse of their world.
I can still see you. Which is weird, because I feel like I've barely seen you this summer.
The downside is that we rarely see the relationships that the Primos have with each other, besides ones that are commonly paired up. I appreciate how many storylines feel drawn from personal experiences, like having your art be criticized as a kid, or growing out of your childhood obsessions. Big fan of the Animorph-style romance novels Tater adores. Hits close to home with my own fandom experiences.
Capybara isn't a joke character, he's the best one.
Similarly, the Humphrey household looks so lived in, whether it's the messy bedroom or a busy sibling height chart. There's a cute dedication to capturing parts of Los Angeles. They should cross over with Mr. Birchum. This is one area where you can really feel the Hey Arnold influence. They also share a composer, and creator Craig Bartlett even did a little clay animation. The heart of Primos makes itself clear as the show marches on. I warmed up to aspects like the songs once they began to explore genres, adapt to new styles fitting of their performers, and let the generally polished visuals run wild with the colors and backgrounds. The only misstep is that they did a clip show episode in 2024, and it has the characters recall moments that they weren't present for. But otherwise, the hate was not at all deserved, and I hope it gets to continue.
It's good to listen to what other people think sometimes, but not when it makes you doubt yourself.
Disney TV animation is overflowing with musical slice-of-life cartoons at the moment, and while not a must-watch, it's filled with charm and the first to reference my favorite theater ad.
After all, betrayal feels great in a place like this.
The crew-exclusive Primos plush of Tater's Vision Tiger is very well made too. I'm surprised how many of these were given out at conventions or easy to buy online for fairly cheap. If you have a spare beta, please give him to me so I can channel my inner David Lynch. I hope he and his squad rest in peace.
First of all, I'd like to introduce my boys. This is Chucko, and this is Buster, and this is Pete. I'm David Lynch, and this is Bob, and this is Dan.
Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
If there's going to be another 2D animated TMNT cartoon so soon after Rise, this time produced by Titmouse for Paramount Plus, having it expand on the iteration introduced in the superb new Mutant Mayhem film, focused on the fallout of its events on humans and mutants alike, is a unique direction to take. However, I feel like it's in the shadow of both aforementioned projects. Like the last series, the expressions are pushed to a cartoony degree, and the fights are still anime influenced, but they feel dirtier, with shakier camera work. It all looks great.
Splinter, watch out!
April, you probably should have said that earlier. The grounded, sketchy settings feel more authentic to New York too. It's balanced between putting natural new spins on classic franchise elements and fleshing out its own identity with a trio of endearing original villains. Now, the Turtles' interactions as teenage siblings was the best part of Mutant Mayhem, but both arcs in Season 1 hinge on splitting them up to send them on their own adventures, seemingly for the sake of not repeating what's been done in previous shows or spoiling opportunities for future movie sequels.
What am I gonna do? I've never done anything like this without my brothers. Oh, you guys don't have to go like that and leave me here all alone.
It's cool to get development for extremely minor characters, like we spend time with this convenience store clerk who the boys briefly robbed. Even the Mutanimals get an opportunity to become less one-note by serving as sidekicks to the Turtles in the back half of the season, which helps make that second arc superior to the first.
This is it. This is how it ends. There's so much I didn't do. I'll never finish One Piece.
But conversely, the creators had to find unnatural workarounds for Jackie Chan not coming back to voice Splinter. What they came up with is funny, but doesn't work long-term.
You're being too loud. Where was I?
The spotlights on each sibling suffer when they aren't paired up with someone else, and the backstories for these shockingly compelling villains struggle a bit to work around the format, suddenly shifting the perspective away from one of the four boys. I did come around to liking how the solo adventures bring out the inexperience and insecurities of each sibling. They tap into the rest of their team's strengths to learn a lesson and forge a path forward.
Even though you weren't there, I felt like you were there, you know? You inspired me.
It's easy to write off Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as disposable, because the dialogue, score, visuals, and emotional complexity don't measure up to Mutant Mayhem. But if you can wrap your head around its structure, it's a satisfying watch on its own.
Hiya, Bernie. Long time no see.
Invincible Fight Girl.
This Adult Swim action comedy takes place in a world inspired by both Dragon Ball and the Attitude Era, where everyone is either an accountant or wrestler. A ridiculous idea that the show takes seriously. We see how these two professions connect and form a society where wrestling tactics can be applied to jobs like being a meat butcher, failed wrestlers run their own bars or cities, and a young accountant named Annie surrounds herself with a promoter and journalist, aspiring to win over a potential mentor to launch her career professionally.
Casey Poblana, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, is related to you? Hey, you're her nephew. You can convince her to train me. Craig!
Forget it.
Every opponent has a backstory, a dream they're fighting for, and their own approach to the ring, combining real wrestling techniques with flashy impacts.
Alone, the arms can only do so much. But with a strong foundation, by drawing power from the legs, we're able to generate more force and put the strength of our entire body behind every attack.
Some battles can last an entire episode and never feel like they drag, because we know what's at stake and understand each opponent's thought process, which I think justifies the heavy use of narration. It reads as a stylistic choice to bring out the strategic aspect of matches instead of telling more than showing, as Andy gradually learns and adjusts her techniques. The growth on display is gradual. This first season feels like it accomplishes what another property could express in a single montage. But Andy undoubtedly earns each win, thanks to her determination and teammates Mikey and Craig, the latter being one of multiple freaks present here. Besides the lack of a dazzling title sequence, which it was just begging for, Invincible Fight Girl's only failing is that it's yet to be renewed for a second season. There are hints at new opponents, character backstories, and a professional wrestling circuit that I'd love to see pay off if Adult Swim can convince Warner Bros. Discovery to actually renew an original project from Cartoon Network Studios. I'm gonna need an art book too. The diversity of incidentals designed after animals and objects is unbeatable. You could fill up the roster of a Smash Bros. Clone with these guys. As it stands, I'm glad this tells a complete underdog story with an open ending, instead of opting for a cliffhanger. Your mileage may vary based on how experienced you are with the shonen and battle anime that inspired it, but Invincible Fight Girl's nuanced and detailed style of storytelling made it my personal winner of the year.
That was the thing!
Jentry Chau versus the Underworld.
I think this Netflix action dramedy about a Chinese-American teenage girl with fire powers fighting demons at her high school excels at building intrigue. From the jump, you're given hints about the truth regarding Jentry's abilities and family that she works to uncover, as well as the mistakes that cast a shadow over her new life in her old hometown.
You wanted the truth? Are you sure you're ready for it?
It cost you nothing, and it cost me everything!
The cycle of characters lying to protect each other grows a little stale over the course of the first 10-episode arc, but every choice has concrete reasoning behind it, and the whole main cast still manages to be likable through it all. Even the comic relief grew on me.
Can I hang out with you guys?
I think the biggest flaw is that the second arc only clocks in at a measly 3 episodes, and starts off feeling too fast and too familiar. Yet, the sudden finale still stuck the landing. It's kinda like Invincible Fight Girl. A fulfilling ending, yet not every question is answered. Now what you need to know going forward is that this is a serialized cartoon, a lore cartoon. And okay, I just summoned Kevin from the round table.
From the moment I heard about Jentry Chau, it became one of my most anticipated cartoons of the year, and I'm more than happy to say that it delivered. This show feels like such a huge love letter to young adult graphic novels in particular, hitting the kind of beat you would expect with love triangles and the main protagonist struggling with her powers, but they managed to subvert all of those tropes in a pretty meaningful way. Yeah, another story-driven cartoon that loves to subvert expectations. That's supposed to be echoed, by the way, Nick. I'm sure you haven't heard of that one before, but it's not done solely to keep you on your toes or compensate for a lack of interesting characters. Every twist services not just the story, but the characters, giving them way more depth than you might initially expect, like every good twist should. Obviously, I can't talk about most of those developments without getting into spoilers, but one I can talk about is Jentry's journey with her powers. Instead of having her discover her powers for the first time or being forced to keep them secret, she already had her supernatural powers long before the start of the series, and because of her past, she's ashamed of them. She's scared of what she's capable of. And while I'm sure you can find similar setups across all of fiction and argue that this isn't breaking new ground, it's still nice to see in a cartoon geared towards teens.
Hey!
I can explain crazy story.
Jentry isn't forced to be aloof about this huge part of her identity. She chooses to be out of fear for how she'll be perceived, which is something that viewers will be able to resonate with. This internal struggle of her powers is the driving force of her entire arc throughout the season, and I really enjoyed seeing her come to terms with not just her powers, but with who she is as a person. And speaking of it being geared towards teens, I do love that this show doesn't pull punches. It doesn't skirt around death, and while you won't see heads flying off, I was surprised with how mature it could be. Not just because some characters die, but because of how those deaths are unpacked afterwards. Unfortunately, I wasn't big on the romance elements, which definitely have a noticeable presence throughout the show. If you're someone who's not into shipping, you might struggle engaging with that aspect of the story. But I can't deny that even the will they won't theys in the show managed to teach us something new about the characters involved and make them way more likable as a result. It would have been easy for Michael, or especially Kit, to be generic love interests, but I ended up really liking both of them, even if I have some grievances of how one of them was handled. But my favorite part of the show by far is the vibe, a joint effort of its art direction and soundtrack. The show looks beautiful, even when it feels like they're working with limited resources. The color styling elevates just about every scene, especially when shit hits the fan. And the music almost always hits, whether it be a licensed Vince Staples bop or an original jam created for the series. Although I did get a little annoyed at how some songs get reused towards the end, but that's not a big deal at all. It's not a masterpiece, there are some flaws, yet it's still the kind of cartoon that we needed at this current point in time, reminding us of the strengths that come with a good serialized cartoon that can commit to the bigger picture without forgetting to have fun. If only Netflix bothered to promote it, check out Jentry Chau. If any of this sounded appealing to you, you'll definitely have a good time with it.
Oh, right. Yeah, I got to do another ranking from worst to best too. Here's that.
Mr. Birchum, Wondla, Sausage Party Foodtopia, Good Times, Megamind Rules, In the Know, Hazbin Hotel, Knuckles, Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Primos, Ted, X-Men 97, The Fairly Oddparents, A New Wish, Jentry Chau vs. the Underworld, Invincible Fight Girl.
When covering 24 months of cartoons all at once, it was fascinating to see adult animation continue to dominate the medium, cable and streaming coexisting more frequently as distribution platforms, the rise of, and go from projects greenlit during the pandemic boom of 2020 to more recent fare that has been in limbo for months, waiting for a renewal. At the moment, things are looking pretty bleak on the mainstream American side of the industry. Films are being written off for taxes, full pilot programs are now shelved, commercial art made with generative AI is becoming mainstream, meaningful representation is being cut, artists have been unemployed for months, if not years, and dozens lost their homes in the recent Los Angeles fires. There'll be an Airtable link in the description to over 40 public fundraisers to help displaced workers rebuild their lives. Donate if you can, and share if you can't. If I'm gonna spend an hour yelling about how someone's passion project didn't personally click with me, this is the least I can do. As for how I'll choose to cover 2025, my current idea is to count down the top 0 best and worst cartoons of the year. But that's subject to change. In the meantime, thank you to all my guests who added some much needed variety to this massive project. Well, almost all of them. And to you for sitting through it. Now, instead of talking about my plans to celebrate the 10th anniversary of my channel, here's an in memoriam for all the cartoons that got their release dates moved to this year.